I'm Julie Bartke with this Senate update. Major finance bills are moving their way through the Senate, and on Friday, the Higher Education and Workforce Development Omnibus Finance Package made its final committee stop before making its way to the Senate floor. Here are the budget targets that were set by the Governor, Senate, and the House. The Senate bill reflects an increase of $205 million over base level funding. The Governor is $288 million, the House $53 million. We caught up with the chair of the Senate Higher Education and Workforce Development Committee, Senator Terri Bonoff, and the lead Republican of that committee, Senator Jeremy Miller, to get their perspectives on the bill. What are you most proud of in this year's Higher Ed Workforce Development bill?
I'm most proud of that the bill incorporates all of the strategies that we have said is most important to our Minnesota students. So we've said we want to increase completion, we want more students to have a post-secondary degree, and we want to prepare our workforce for the 21st century. And so this bill does all of that, and it does so in a very strategic way. We have provided resources to both the University of Minnesota and MnSCU to keep their tuition down, and we've put forward very strong accountability measures. We call them performance metrics, and we say we're going to hold back 5% of our overall appropriation so that they meet those metrics, and those metrics do have to do with the shared values and the shared goals of those on the committee, and even more importantly, all Minnesotans. And that has to do with reducing the cost to students. It has to do with completion. We actually, using the December 8th North Star Summit, where so many people in the community, if you recall, Julie, we had like 300 people come together and say they wanted attainment goals. They wanted to be able to say over 70% of all Minnesotans by 2020 will have some degree. That is in our bill. In addition, they identified disparity as the #1 concern at the North Star Summit, and so we have put an attainment goal that says by 2020, over 50% of all the ethnic groups will have some post-secondary degree. And then the performance metrics give specific strategies of how to achieve that. So I'm proud of that. In addition, I'm very proud of our investment in the University of Minnesota Med School, and then in the provisions we put forward to make changes to the human subject testing with the Office of the Legislative Auditor's report that really identified some very serious breaches. Our bill contains strong language that requires both reporting and an answer for how they're going to deal with these things differently.
Your bill doesn't necessarily require a 2-year tuition freeze. However, it does help fund a 2-year tuition freeze. You've been critical of the university and MnSCU coming to the legislature to try to get the state to fund a tuition freeze. Would you if you can, set the stage for why you decided to put it into your bill?
Well, we didn't put a tuition freeze in the bill.
No, but you are putting some funding and with the hope that it helps.
Yeah. So that's actually always was my intention, that we should invest in the University of Minnesota and MnSCU because it's the right thing to do. It's important that we provide funding for students to have access to post-secondary. If we say it's imperative that they have a degree, then we ought to fund that. The reason why I have said we shouldn't have a state-mandated tuition freeze is because then I think that puts the onus for the university and the MnSCU's decision of where to have their costs on our shoulders, and I reject that. I think that's a business management decision. I would hope they would freeze their tuition. We're going to invest absolutely as much as we can, and I'm going to fight to invest as much as we can. Their decision to freeze their tuition, a right decision in my opinion, is their decision. I think if you put that on us, what you're in essence saying is you keep raising your costs as much as you want and just send us the bill. And I say no, I don't think that's appropriate.
Have you had an opportunity to follow the House with its bill? And shortly you will be in conference committee with the House. How do you see pulling these two sides together?
It's going to be very tough, Julie. I've seen the broadest parameters of the House proposal. You know, there is currently $75 million of unspent money within the state grant program because of the way the formula ends up expending the funds. We've made changes to the formula in keeping with the governor's recommendation that allow for not just all that money to go out, but then an additional $19 million. We've increased the LME, so the amount that they can use for living expenses. We've increased the cap so that more of the students have access to be able to go to the highest quality institution that they are eligible to go to, whether it be a not-for-profit private or the University of Minnesota. And then we've changed the formula so that those independent, non-traditional students have access to more funding. The House actually took a good deal of that unspent money and they took it out of the state grant program, which is truly unprecedented. You know, to take money that's meant for students, that's in that state grant program, take it out of there, and then they combine that with their overall budget target and sent their entire appropriation directly to MnSCU and funded the University of Minnesota. I believe it was $1 million. And so we have, for a long time, believed that we should have equal treatment for our system, MnSCU, for the University of Minnesota, and for the state grant, which is student-directed. And so our bill preserves the integrity of that approach, and I think we're going to have some work to do to come to some agreement with the House.
Senator Miller, first, your first impressions or your impression of the higher ed bill. Obviously, you've been an integral part of putting it together.
Sure, I'm very excited about the Senate higher ed bill. It really focuses on students, and I think a lot of times that's lost in the discussion here when we're talking policy and budgets and everything else that goes along with putting together an omnibus bill. But in our higher education bill, really the focus is on the students and all about the students and how we can try to make that higher education more accessible and more affordable to those students.
Any provisions that you're disappointed were left out?
No, I think we got everything in there that we needed to.
All right, let's talk a little bit about what's in the House and how you see it as your role to try to pull the House in to be a little more in line with several of the provisions that are in your legislation as well.
I'll be honest, I'm not exactly 100% familiar with what's in the House bill. I've been really focused on the Senate bill. I do know that the targets are significantly different, so one of our goals will be to work with the House and try to increase their target.